Welcome to the Orthodontic Pearls Podcast, where we share tips and tricks to better your clinic, business, and life. And now your hosts of the podcast, Drs. Chris Teeters, Brian Anderson, and Andy Sarpadar.
Welcome back to the Orthodontic Pearls Podcast, where we talk about stuff that actually matters in orthodontics, the clinical, the philosophical, controversial, and occasionally the wildly off topic. I'm Andy Sarpadar, along with my co-host, as always, Dr. Chris Teeters. How are you doing today, Chris?
Feeling great, Andy. It's over a year since we started the podcast, and we had Kyle on in the beginning, so it's nice to, be a year past and kind of talk about what's new and what's hot in orthodontics. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So with us as well, coming from Salt Lake City, is Brian Anderson. And how are you doing today, Brian?
Doing well, man. Love this time of year, beginning of summer. I feel like there are a lot of possibilities, a lot more time outside. Of course, as orthodontists, we spend a lot of time indoors. And so it's really nice, I feel like, to be able to come home and still feel like there's plenty of time to get out and about and spend time with family and just be outdoors.
Yeah, Chris and I kind of have the opposite going on in our 110 degrees. Sure. We hit 110 last week, didn't we, Chris? I think that's the earliest that Arizona's ever hit 110 degrees. So we're hunkering down for the summer over here.
Here we go.
Well, good deal, guys. Today with us, we have two guests. And just to be upfront, there's going to be a little conflict of interest here because Chris and I both use these guys for our digital marketing. First off, we have Dr. Kyle Fagala, who, as Chris mentioned, has been on the show before, but we're doing fresh content today. So it's all going to be new stuff. Kyle is the co-founder of Neon Canvas, a board-certified orthodontist, owner of two practices, faculty at the UT Health Science Center, and host of his own podcast and author of a bunch of children's books at this point, right? Oh, and we got the mug there too. For those of you who can't see the video, he's holding up his mug. So how are you doing over there, Kyle? You're in Memphis today, correct?
Yeah, doing great. Yeah, it's starting to warm up. Not 110 quite yet. It is raining outside. It's thundering. So that's cool. So if you hear a little rumble, it's not my stomach. It is the weather. So.
Oh, very cool. And now let's talk about Luke Infinger. So Luke, you were the founder originally of Hip Creative, and now you have merged companies with Neon Canvas, and you've created this new entity called Ion. So tell us just briefly about yourself and a little bit about Ion.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to the discussion. I'm based in Pensacola, Florida. I've been married little over 12 years. 2 kids, live out in the middle of nowhere on 15 acres, and it's not quite 110. It's probably more like Memphis, I would guess. But I can tell you it's sunny and humid here, so it feels pretty hot. In terms of Ion, it's something that we merged officially last year in 2025, right before the AAO. And I can talk more about this as we get into the episode, but really, Hip and Neon is the perfect marriage. Obviously, we were known for the same things, but we approach those things differently. And each agency, Hip and Neon, have their strong suit, which is actually different. And so in terms of merging the companies, bringing them together, we can offer the best of both worlds, creative services and tech, AI, predictable revenue and growth. So that was kind of the idea behind that. And then Ion is a brand that we put together to be able to create new tools with AI, tech, or put a course together, put a book together, and both agencies have access to that. So both of our client bases can plug into this greater thing, but stay with Hip or Neon. They don't have to change or anything like that and get access to the tools, tech, AI, innovation, courses, curriculum that we're developing.
Very cool. Well, we're going to get into that in some detail in just a little bit, but I appreciate that introduction because I think that that's one of the topics that people could use some clarity on is, you guys used to be competitors and now we've got this new agency. So I'd love to explore that in just a little bit here. But first of all, anyone out there watching the hockey playoffs? It's June 12th right now, and we just finished up Game 5 Is there, Luke, are you? Come on, back me up. Anyone out there?
Nobody.
No one.
But
All right.
I will say Kyle and I are kind of beating each other up on the NBA Finals right now.
Are you?
That was a game. That's the game you'd be talking about.
It's probably all rigged, but I did predict Nick would be ahead and he thought the Spurs, and maybe the Spurs will come out and win. But
it's very unlikely at this point. I also have a bet going with my 14-year-old who, really smart kid. He's not learned enough that his brain has started to push things out, which is my excuse. But he knows like all the names of all the basketball players from all time. So he, for whatever collection of reasons, is a Knicks fan because he plays with them on 2K. And so we made a bet, gentleman's bet. It's a $1 bet. But it's more important than just the $1. And I thought for sure the Spurs were going to win, and they went down 2-0 and kind of crushed. It's not fun to have your 14-year-old be smarter than you and be better than you at things. So I'm working through it.
What I saw is that they led in, I think, every first quarter, right? And it was up by like double digits. And then
they were by like 30
even
something.
and in every fourth quarter, even the last 2 minutes, they were still leading. Or was it 4 minutes, 2 minutes? I don't remember, but some crazy number in every game. And this last one was the biggest blown lead in finals history. What was it? 29 points, something like that? 30 points? Yeah.
It's real bad.
They were down by 27 at half.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think the largest lead was 29. Yeah.
My favorite meme coming out of all this, I posted it on my Instagram, was everyone saw Seinfeld was at the game, and it's a picture of him, and it's saying, they know how to take the lead, they just don't know how to hold the lead. And holding it is really the most important part. Which, for those of you who are a huge Seinfeld fan, the car reservation.
The car reservation.
There's an episode where Seinfeld tries to pick up his rental car, and they say they don't have his reservation, and that's the joke. So
also Larry David was there, so they had the whole crew. You know, they could have just gone ahead and made an episode or something. So maybe one day. They
totally should have. What a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly entertaining across the board, and looking forward to the outcome of that. By the time this airs, everyone will already know what it is. Okay. Yeah. So, Kyle, I want to talk a little bit about your background. You said that the reason you wanted to go into dentistry was watching the dentist at your church in Jonesboro. That's Arkansas, right?
Yeah, Northeast Arkansas. Little kind of farming community. Not a ton going on there culturally, but yeah, that's where I grew up. No offense to Jonesboro.
And you said that the reason you wanted to emulate these guys is that they weren't on call. So tell us a little bit about that and what motivated you to become an orthodontist. Yeah,
that's not exactly the reasoning you would give like in a dental school interview. You know, I was out to save the world, right? But the reality was that I got good grades. My older brother, he would sort of just talk about like being a doctor, like he was going to be a doctor. He ended up being a pharmacist, which is a doctor. And so I sort of like looked around at the landscape knowing very, very little because I had no doctors in my family, nothing like that, no business owners. And at church, there were doctors who would get, on an old school beeper, they'd get called out of church, like an oncologist, Dr. Blatchley, he'd have to stand up and leave, and I was like, I don't want to do that. Or I had a good friend whose dad was an internal medicine doctor and had to get up in the middle of the night and go to the hospital at like 1 a.m. We're playing like Sega Genesis. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So it was like really no more complicated than what's the next best thing? I'll be a dentist, But I didn't actually know like what a dentist did. And at that point, never went to the orthodontist. My dentist, kind of the gatekeeper of my teeth and my bite, was like, you're fine, So I didn't then figure out about orthodontics until I got into dental school. I thought I would always be a general dentist. I'd come back to Jonesboro and kind of do that whole game. So.
And what made you choose orthodontics?
Yeah, so randomly, Anna had done radio TV. That wasn't random. She chose that. She wanted to be an international correspondent because she'd grown up overseas. But moving to Memphis for dental school, because we got married like a couple months before dental school started, that market was tough. It would have been tough to break into. And if she had been able to, she would have been like kind of like lower level in terms of news, working weekends and nights and things like that. So we just decided that lifestyle wise, that was not going to be great. And so we just randomly talked to a dentist, Dr. Mike Parkey in Jonesboro, Arkansas, who went to church with me. And he just so happened to know an orthodontist that had an office in West Memphis that had hired someone, and then that person quit. And so now they needed somebody. It was like a really just like strange circumstance that in hindsight, why was I asking someone in Jonesboro about a potential job in Memphis? I mean, it showed how naive that I was about the world. But it just so happened that he made that connection, and then Anna interviewed and got the job. And so she began working inside an orthodontic practice that basically the week that I started dental school. And so then from there, she was like, eventually, I think you'd actually really like orthodontics. You should look into that. But I was like full speed ahead. Like, I'm doing general dentistry. I don't want to do any more school after this. Like, I wasn't paying attention to my grades that first semester. At the end of the first,
that surprises me.
Well, at the end of the first semester, I looked at my rank, and I think I was like 11 out of 82 or something. And I was
barely even trying, huh?
No, it's not that I wasn't trying. It's just I wasn't paying attention to it like I started to after that. But I felt like, if I'm at 11, like I can get into the top 10% if I work a little harder or whatever. But
yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. So is that when you buckled down? Is when you had some motivation? And
I think so. Yeah. And I considered like prosthodontics, surprisingly. Like I really liked doing the denture teeth thing, and I liked like the exactness and the precision of that. And then I kind of quickly figured out, I don't know, maybe not, Anyway, again, very inspiring stuff.
So you obviously looked at some different specialties, and again, not the interview answer, but what was it about orthodontics that kind of magnified the benefits of dentistry for you, and what ultimately made you go to that? And be real, not the Pollyanna answer of I want to change the world.
I mean, I think at the time I had worked 2 summers as a youth intern at the church that I went to. One of those summers with Anna. And I think the idea of working with teenagers, like I like that age group. I can't do young kids that well. Like a pediatric dentist would be very tough for me. Like the screen, like sounds are tough for me. So it felt like, that'll be kind of fun, like relationally. And it's a little bit like also like lower impact. Like I definitely didn't want to deal with like life or death. Not that oral surgery is like life or death, but it's a little more blood and guts and a little less personal and, and that sort of thing, relational, which at this point in my life, sometimes I'm like, that would be nice. Like if everyone was asleep, like, on a Thursday, I might actually enjoy that. But I really only like seriously considered orthodontics. And it sort of felt like because of Anna's relationship, like working inside an orthodontic practice, it just made a ton of sense. And she ended up at a different orthodontic practice, and that orthodontist was like, hey, you should come on as a partner. It was a father-son situation. And so I was like, sure, and again, just kind of like letting life carry me along and not really understanding what I was heading towards, or really in all this, like the degree to which my personality and skill set is a pretty good fit for orthodontics. I'm extremely like detail oriented. I mean, a lot of those things that now in hindsight, I'm like, well, of course I ended up doing that. Like it made a lot of sense. I think it was a little lost on me at the time as I was like selecting, which of course in dental school, they don't teach you anything about orthodontics. They show you how to like bend a holly wire, and you're like, this sucks. Yeah. And in fact, it does suck. It's like the world's worst bird beak plier to bend the thickest wire on earth. So anyway,
I think that's partially by design too, is just to discourage people from doing it. They reveal all the good stuff once you get into residency.
Sure.
Or at least that's the perception. Kyle, in addition to all of your proclivities that led you towards orthodontics, you really consider yourself a builder. And Saddle Creek opened up in 2013. You and Anna built that from scratch. As you were going through this building process, what would you say surprised you the most about building versus everything else that you've built before? Building a practice versus everything else that you've built before?
I mean, to that point, the only thing I had really built was a lot smaller, like in concept and execution and all that. So I'd never built a business. I had built, I was like a yearbook editor and did the newspaper as an editor, and would develop websites as a kid, and video game ideas and stuff. Like I always loved the idea of creating things, and then fostered and effectively like managed a band during college and dental school, and helped promote that and arrange things. So like a little bit of like development of the soft skills of running a business without actually running a business, or without actually making money, it turns out. And so when you start to build a practice, it's all of that magnified by 10. It's just a lot more work. And so fortunately I was a 3-year program at Tennessee. We had that full final year to really plan and execute on this idea. And of course I had Anna, who had like all this experience and all this knowledge that I would have never had. And so, I think about how would that have been doing that had I not had Anna? And the truth is, I don't think I would have done it. And simultaneously, I don't know what other job opportunities there were. Like the partnership I alluded to earlier, it had fallen apart. He changed his mind on that. And so we're really left with the only option of, if we want to stay in Memphis, we kind of have to do our own thing. So it was definitely not what we had in mind. And everybody's like, why don't you buy a practice? It's like, well, it wasn't just hanging off a tree, so we had to kind of develop our own thing. So I think anyone who started a practice, it is an all-consuming, like every minute of every day, you're thinking about it, you're doing something towards that goal. And it's just this massive checklist that never ends,
Yeah.
One thing I find interesting is it seems to me as I observe a lot of our colleagues, and that starts with observing myself, a lot of orthodontists have many hands in different projects. It seems like we are doing a lot of things. Like myself, I have this, pediatric practice. I have 3 orthodontic locations that I go to. Orthodontic Pearls, Relapse, the band. Of course, you have TDO, Neon Canvas, now Ion, 2 practices. You play in your church band. I could say the same thing about Chris, Luke. I'm sure you, there might be a lot of things between all of us or those involved in the orthodontic profession. So my children's doctor, my kid's pediatrician, recently diagnosed 2 of my kids with ADHD and said, you know what, orthodontics actually has a lot of ADHD people because they go from one thing to the next quickly, boom, boom, boom. And there's a lot of variety. So my question is, and you've said, Kyle, before that, it's almost harder to maintain something and stay in something and stay invested in something than it is to start something. So my question is to you, what are you finding hardest right now to maintain? For me, I'm finding it hardest to maintain my day-to-day in orthodontic practice. Not that I don't love orthodontics, but that I feel this burnout. You described, it'd be nice if everyone could be asleep. I mean, we all love interacting with our patients, I'm sure, but I think it's just the monotony and the weight of doing it every day. I'm curious, what is it for you?
Yeah, great question. And I'll let maybe Luke pop in on some of this too, because he manages multiple different businesses and kind of the same age. I just hit 42. I think some of this is just like the dilemma of middle age, of on some level, like as a creator, and certainly I have some form of ADD or ADHD and never knew that or knew to give it that name. The only kid I knew who had ADHD had restless leg syndrome and was like kind of a spaz, and so it was that was like my one view of a kid that took Ritalin. It wasn't someone like me that I could achieve things and do all this kind of stuff, but my mind is always racing and always on to the next thing. I think the real challenge, and like a wiser person than I would probably say this in a better way, is finding comfort in doing the basic things each day. It almost starts to feel like an Eastern religion approach to things. It's like kind of like the wax on, wax off, like mentality of, there is actually more value and more deep potential for relationship by committing to the normalcy of things. It's just not how I'm wired. And so I'm sort of wired to enjoy and want to seek out new things, new opportunities, new ideas. I love that building phase, but it just feels like in all parts of life right now, it is, I'm being asked and called to sort of watch the flock in a way, like as a shepherd. It's sort of like every day is kind of the same. And with orthodontics, you've done it now for 15 years or whatever. There's nothing that surprises you really. Even human interaction, you kind of know how people are going to respond. You know how to fix when they're upset. Like you've learned all these things. So you're really just like doing it again. It's almost like watching a movie you've seen 20 times, you're watching it again. And like, it's kind of fun because it's coming, but it's also like maybe not as fun as watching a new movie that's exciting the first time you watch it, if that makes any sense. So absolutely. I don't have an answer to it. I am finding that I understand now why people talk about midlife crisis and things like that, and why it does impact people emotionally so much, because it is tough,
But on the flip side of conserving energy, I think our brain's wired to pawn those things off to the unconscious mind. Like you said, you can go through your day and it doesn't take a lot of energy. You can play that movie for the 20th time. How stressful would it be, just on the flip side of it, if you had to start up a practice now and go through that all-consuming? Would you be able to handle it at 42 like you did back in your later 20s? I think in a way there's a blessing to the monotony of it. James Clear in Atomic Habits says it's learning how to fall in love with boredom. Really hard for us ADHD people, really hard. Do you have what's keeping you falling in love with boredom? How are you able to keep doing this day and day without burning out? Is there any kind of strategy that you have found that helps you navigate through that?
I'm going to pass this one off to Luke, but I'll just first say I don't think I have figured that out. I've gone through different variations of burnout. Even a couple weeks ago, I just told Anna, I was like, I feel like I need like a sabbatical or something. Like, she was like, a sabbatical? What are you talking about? But it's just like, I'm kind of like at that point at different times. And then of course, once you sit back and you look at everything that's going on, you're like, this is all great. This is what I hoped for. This is what I prayed for. This is like what I wanted. And then why am I not content with it? So, but I am going to put this to Luke because Luke probably has a great answer. And I'm sure you're dealing with some of these same things.
For sure. 100%. So I also don't want this to feel like a plug, but it's kind of funny because we wrote a book about this whole thing, the practice paradox. And you can see burnout, avoid burnout on the cover. Mm-hmm. But I think it's something what we're talking about is what any high performer deals with. And I notice it with myself, like Kyle's talking about, kind of in a place of burnout a couple weeks ago. It's ebb and flow, right? And so I see this with really smart, competent people in business. Obviously, you guys are talking about orthodontists, but I've seen it actually kind of be very counterproductive, where the same thing that got you successful, perfectionism, high performance, doing a lot, being able to jump from one thing to the other and be very competent or learn quickly in that thing, it is totally what burns you out at scale because it's not scalable. Once you hit a certain place in your business, you cannot perform at that level. It's also very hard to train a team to perform at that level. If they could or wanted to, they would go start their own business or practice, or, if it's an associate. So expectations can be really tough for perfectionists. And it's why a lot of orthodontists and business owners too can't grow. They keep hitting that ceiling because everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be my way. And it just drives you crazy. On the flip side of that, or I guess tangential part of that, is people who jump from thing to thing. That I've seen so many smart, great business people and also doctors. They're in their flow state, they're in their genius, and Chris, like you said, they're just bored as hell. And so they go start this new thing, and it's like, man, you were so good at this one thing. I have somebody I looked up to for a really long time, incredible at sales, marketing, and he built a $100 million empire and then just bailed and jumped ship and is doing something totally different, which I don't think can have as big of an impact, but it's because he was bored, and he's a really smart guy. So I'm just going to on to the next, and so knowing when to start and stop, like you're talking about, Chris, with Atomic Habits, when do you just lock in? And it's also, you have to think about for the greater good, not just yourself, right? Because if it's all about you and how you feel, you're not going to have fulfillment or impact doing that. Yeah. So when you can lock in and you can coach and mentor people, and some days it does suck because you're bored, but you have to think about everybody else who's on the ship with you.
Yeah, I wonder, we mentioned boredom as a motivator. I wonder how much ego factors into that as well. Like 100%. Right. 100%. Like when you reach, for me, my career has always been a means to an end. I like Kyle's talks about the lifestyle practice. So you get enough money to support everything else that has meaning in your life, whatever that means. And once you hit that, how much more do you want to sacrifice to get a little bit more? Like, what is the utility of that additional income or that additional practice? Is there any utility, or is it just, I don't know what else to do with myself. I'm good at doing this, and I feel validated when I build this empire. So I wonder sometimes, probably this connection between boredom and maybe a little bit of ego in there as well. I want to ask you directly on this, Kyle, because one of the things that one of the advantages you have is this unique perspective. You're involved in so many different angles of the orthodontic profession. You're a business owner. You're a marketing agency co-founder. You teach, you lecture, you have your hands on a lot of different perspectives within the profession. And I think that gives you a unique read on certain things. And with your analytical mind, you can recognize certain patterns in human nature and orthodontic nature that keep recurring. Given that we're talking about what would motivate an orthodontist to keep going through these changes and this growth, what are your thoughts on that from a pattern recognition perspective? And maybe what are some other patterns that you're seeing among orthodontists?
Yeah. Well, being involved in all that, I think does give me a little bit more kind of insight and awareness. I have a lot of conversations with different orthodontists that are going through different stages of being an orthodontist. I've been able to kind of see the ups and downs of people, both in terms of practice and also just in their personal lives. And I think at the end of the day, what I see is that it's inevitable that you reach this point of effective boredom. And I think how one chooses to sort of navigate that really makes all the difference. And not that I am perfect in this way. I mean, there's definitely things I've said yes to that in hindsight I should have said no to, for the betterment of the things that matter most, which is, I guess, where you should begin a conversation like this is, what are your presuppositional concepts? What are your core values? What is it that actually matters most to you? Or actually, I should say, what should matter most to you? And in that sense, what matters most in an ultimate sense? And regardless of how you view the world, the universe, the presence of God or not, or whatever, probably the highest and best is to look at your life as if you were at the end of it, and then to kind of look back on it and say, what would I hope to have been like? Who would I have hoped to foster the best relationships with? And I think in that sense, as a religious person, at the top would be God, then it would be those closest to you, and then it would be yourself. Probably the inverse of that is what is often what our motivations drive us towards. And so we usually seek to serve ourselves first, and then others, and then maybe we get around to God. And so in that way, I guess where I see orthodontists struggle is when they reach this point of boredom, or they're 12 to 15 years into a practice, they either do something sort of rash, they start another business or start to invest a lot of time into something else. They get a divorce, and getting a divorce is a complicated thing. It's not something that you're always choosing. There's a lot of complexity in that, but that is a very, very common thing among people that are orthodontists, that are wealthy, that are successful, that are now in a certain way experiencing a second life in a way. Maybe they're more successful or more socially engaged. They've changed, obviously, and sometimes not for the better. And so that's a very common thing. But obviously those things, in hindsight, you talk to anyone who's gone through that, if they could have avoided it, they would have. And a lot of times you talk to people that have started a second or third business, and you ask them, how's that gone? Almost always, I probably should have just focused on my orthodontic practice. And so what I guess I come away from all that with is that simplicity and focusing on the basic things, to an extent saying no to more things than you say yes to, those would be the things that I feel like lead to the greatest flourishing. While it doesn't feel like in the moment saying no to something is leading to flourishing, it actually is by sort of the simplification of those things that matter most, and prioritizing around those things. I don't know that I said anything majorly profound, and I probably could have said it in fewer words. But that, I think we all know that to be true. It's just making yourself do that and making yourself be disciplined along those things is really difficult. Really difficult.
I just to cap that off is with the saying no to things. As a ADHD person myself, one of the things I struggle with is time management a lot. And I listened to this podcast that was really kind of life-changing for me. I don't mean in the sense that I actually changed my habits, but I changed my perspective at least. Which was that, most people look at time management as, okay, I have all these things that I want to do, and I want to find the optimal way of cramming this into 24 hours in a day. So I use spreadsheets and all. That's what time management is, organizing and getting everything done. But really what time management is saying no to the things that aren't important so that you have adequate time to engage in the things that are. And that sounds a lot like what you're describing right now. And I may not have the greatest schedule in front of me. I still hate schedules. I still, ask anyone, all of you guys know I can't show up on time to anything. But I have eliminated a lot of the things that were causing me anxiety, that were causing me distraction, so that when I am engaged in something, I can be all in and I can be experiencing that and I can be investing in that. And I may not be as efficient as Chris with his schedules and all the whatever spreadsheets he uses to get everything done that he's able to do. But for the stuff that I care about, that stuff is getting done.
Nice.
And I just want to make a comment about what we've talked about here, boredom and midlife crises and what do you do? I've found as I've, looked at my own life, my own patterns, and of course observed then people around me, my own family members, and of course my friends and colleagues, I've found that of course it's normal to have boredom, and it's actually something I think we need to invite more of in our modern society. Mm-hmm. And Orwell described sort of this fascist kind of society where people didn't have access to information, right? They were burning books. Nobody had access to information. Huxley wrote a book, A Brave New World, where he talked about where they have so much information and so much stimuli that they don't even care about reading stuff. They don't even care about going deeper. They're just constantly entertained. And I've noticed in my own life that, gosh, that's turned out to be more prophetic than Orwell's 84.
Yeah.
I've gotten more comfortable not being stimulated, which is liberating in a way, because I see how much I've chased stimulus, like a new thing, a new experience, a new event. And that's probably never going to change. So it's not that it's bad. It's not bad because look at all the good that it does. Look at all the good restlessness does in the world. It does a lot of good. It produces a lot of good. But I think in middle age, I think really the wisdom is for us to say, we can't keep doing the same things that don't satisfy, because they don't really ever satisfy us. The pursuit is satisfying, but the achievement generally is not. So I think we say we got to learn to find satisfaction in the maintenance, in the monotony, in the day-to-day. And Andy, when Chris said something about boredom, I saw you on the monitor. I saw you on the monitor when he mentioned boredom.
Of course, Chris loves to fall in love with boredom.
No. I saw when he mentioned being okay with being bored, I saw you go, ooh.
Yeah. Oh, I hate being bored.
I felt the same thing, because I think we feel this contraction, like, But I just think we can go deeper. And to me, you can practice gratitude. Like, okay, I'm grateful I have this job and I get to do this thing. Right now, I don't want to. That's fair. And to acknowledge the dual reality of it, because you gaslight yourself if you only focus on, well, no, that's I shouldn't think that. Well, of course you should think that. You're a human being. Of course you want to finish a goal. That's normal. So
people don't know what they don't know. So when we talk about habits and patterns, let's make it really practical. The orthodontist who is frustrated, wants to grow, he goes out, or she, and starts more locations, but their first location wasn't really great, but that's what they know how to do, is start things, right? And what we're talking about is going deeper, and I'll add a different word to it. It's maturity. So in order to be okay with boredom or learn a new skill, really is what we're talking about, you have to mature as a business owner, as an orthodontist, and you guys are both of those things. I'm just an entrepreneur and business owner. But if you don't mature and I just keep starting businesses, they're going to just hit a ceiling really quick. If I can mature and go to the next step and go deeper, could I take my business, grow a team, and take it from 1 million to 10 million? The numbers are arbitrary, but you guys get what I'm saying. Can I help more people? Can I onboard more customers? Can I cross-sell? Can I upsell? You can do all these things if you go deeper. And, Kyle has the lifestyle practice. I would argue that it's one of the larger lifestyle practices that exist. So it's optimized because he's able to do what we're talking about. I talk to doctors every day, all day. We work with 500 plus, and I see people make very bad decisions and they're frustrated. And we can talk about this too, how they feel like marketing is going to fix the problem. It's not a marketing problem. It's an operational problem. It's a mindset problem. It's a habits problem. It's a maturity problem. So I'll just add that different perspective.
Luke, what do you think? I mean, you work with so many practices, and I think most of us are going for that lifestyle practice, like maybe one location, 2 max, high output, high quality. Are you seeing that's in terms of happiness? And we're not talking about necessarily numbers, but the docs that are like the happiest feel that they're happy with what they're making. They're balanced, where they're working maybe 3 days a week, and they can be more of a dad, do other things that they love. What are the common characteristics that you're seeing in those practices that you think our listeners could really take home and use as a pearl in theirs?
Yeah, it's interesting because I was talking to a practice owner yesterday who is fairly small, has 4 locations, and can't maximize any of them. So I think you're right. It is, if you're going for the lifestyle practice, you want to have a balanced life. You want to be able to enjoy your family, friends. I advise people when people say, well, I'm going to go start another location. Well, how well is your current location doing? Mm-hmm. How much are you spending on your current location? If it's not optimized, you're going to go start something and you're not going to optimize it because you haven't done it with what you have. So focus on what you have first. And if you want to grow beyond that, then go start another location. You're not going to attain your growth, or you don't have to. And there's an exception to everything I'm saying. If you're in rural America and literally population of 2,000 in the middle of nowhere, that's kind of a different story. But in most cases, you can get to where you want to be with one location. So focus on that first and then duplicate.
Let's talk about how hip and iron can help that. So, for example, I think a lot of people open a second practice because they say, well, I can't squeeze blood from a turnip. I can't get more patients in the door, right? I'm kind of like, maybe I'm maxed out at like 2-3 days. And so I'm going to go into a new demographic. I'm going to go into a new area and tap into that. So what are some ways that you found, digital marketing and what you do allow someone to go deeper in their current practice and maybe achieve leads within their community without needing to open another practice, double their overhead, double their stress, et cetera?
Yeah. Well, we see the same thing at HIP and Neon Canvas. And I would kind of flip your question or point to not just digital marketing, but all marketing, because that's the conversation I have with people is I just want to grow through digital because I don't feel like going out in the community anymore. I don't feel like getting referrals. I don't feel like whining and dining. I don't want to hire a community outreach person. Well, I would challenge someone to think about all those things because it can be different per community. Like I'm in Pensacola, Florida. So this is good old boy, Bible Belt. Community outreach might be very different than New York City or Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
And so it's not one size fit all. You have to look at a complete picture and formulate a strategy that you and your team can commit to. And that can look different everywhere. And I'll tell you what I see, and this is across the board with Neon Canvas and Hip Creative, is the practices who have already invested in their market. Their brand is known in the community. When they come to us, this is obvious. It goes without saying. It's easy to get someone who's hitting doubles to hit home runs. When you're not doing anything and you say, hey, I really hope digital marketing works because nothing else has worked, that's kind of scary. Now it can certainly help, but you're not having any momentum and you expect this one thing to get momentum. That's not a place I would want to be with my businesses. So I would actually get things humming in multiple areas and look to digital to amplify what I'm already doing. That's what you do with digital marketing.
Yeah, I like what you said there about you can teach a guy who's hitting doubles to hit home runs, but if you're not even getting on base, there's like a whole there's a foundation that's missing there. Who would you say are your ideal clients then? Are you targeting the guy who's already well known and you just want to double the practice? Are you targeting a startup who has no foundation, no relationships? Or is it both of those, and how would you approach them differently?
It is a little bit of both, and I'll start and kick it over to Kyle because I think this is where we can talk about differentiation historically with Hip Creative and Neon. Most people know my story. If you don't, the first orthodontist I ever worked with and took on as a hip client was Ben Fishbein. Mm-hmm. So talk about somebody already hitting home runs, and it's like, hey, we just need to get this to grand slam. We need more people on bases before you hit the home run. As we started to grow, we realized all the processes we needed to have in place because people did not have the operation or leadership team that Fishbein had. So that was very unique and is very unique. And because of that, we did attract some of the bigger orthodontists, Kyle Sparkman, Sanders, Graff, like these people who have big practices and they just want to go even larger and continue to help people and in their communities. We were not really known for working with startup practices because we were priced and our price kind of as a premium. So it's tough with startups when, hey, how do I get my feet wet? And so that's something we had to think about, adapt and change if we wanted to continue to grow because Fishbein's a unicorn. Some of these practices I'm talking about, and if we go back to the lifestyle practice, that's what most people want. Most people don't want this crazy growth because, again, you can get stuck in that and it can be a lot. It's not always what it's cracked up to be. And so I think Neon Canvas, that's, Kyle, I'll speak for you for a second. That's why you started it. You kind of built it to be the best option for brand identity, design, video, getting people to this place where, you're the poster child of Neon Canvas of here's what you can create. Not that you don't, Neon Canvas, it's not that we don't have these big growth stories. We do. It's just, it was a different model and created for a different purpose. And so those things have kind of blended. And over time, as we grew, we started to speak to each one, Neon Canvas and Hip both. Like I talked about, we had to kind of change our pricing at Hip, and Neon did some different things because you have to if you want to continue to grow. But that's where our joining forces just made a lot of sense because now we offer the best of both worlds. And so now we're in this cross-selling position I talked about in business, talking about going deeper. Instead of getting bored and starting a new agency, it's like, hey, how can we take this thing deeper? We can together because now I can go to a Hip client and say, hey, you should get a photo and video package, or you should rebrand, or we need to bring organic social media into your practice. Now, our Neon Canvas team can say, hey, you need Practice Beacon because you don't have predictable results. And so we can plug these things in and we can truly bring the best strategy to practices.
Can I just ask a clarifying question here? So it sounds to me like, Kyle, you're more the foundational stuff. I know you're big on storytelling and, practice identity, branding, all of that. Am I correct in hearing that Kyle's or Neon Canvas, that section is setting the foundation, and then once you grow to a certain level, then the Hip wing can take it to the stratosphere? Is that about what the strategy is with Ion?
Certainly a way to look at it. The interesting thing is because we can bring someone in through either brand now, we can offer those things on either side.
I see.
Trying to be the same thing, but we can pull from either or. Yeah.
Got it. So you can come in from either direction, but you're filling in the gaps based on the other can provide. Okay, that makes sense. Any other comments you want to add there, Kyle?
Synergy. Yeah.
Synergy. A couple observations. I think it's interesting that the way that Neon Canvas largely approached digital marketing and marketing was reflective of my practice and its trajectory. Like a lot of the things that were most important to me remain core values at Neon Canvas, whereas I think Hip, obviously it's reflective of Justin and Luke and the way that they see the world, but it's also in some ways reflective of Fishbein and that trajectory. And so those end up being two pretty big pillars of the lifestyle practice, or not the lifestyle practice, but of practice personality types. Mine being lifestyle practice, that one being kind of, multi-center, large scale practice growth. Now, of course, on the other side of the spectrum, we do offer packages for startups because we'd sort of built something that really ignored that part of the market. And it kind of had to, because the amount of time that it requires to build the kind of websites we're building and so on, it just is cost prohibitive. But to be frank, with AI now, we can build a website a lot quicker. It's rudimentary in some ways. It's not going to be what you could get if you put the time and effort and the human hours into something, but it's really good. And so we unveiled that at the AAO, a package that is certainly more affordable for a startup.
Yeah,
so now we can serve all orthodontists, which is great, which has always been something we've wanted in the past. Neon Canvas did that with Neon Now, and it worked. It just now we're even able to bring the price down even a little bit more, which is great.
Yeah, I'd add to that too, because a lot of people probably are thinking, and I've talked to people who think, well, I can just go do it myself. And the answer is yes, you could. Mm-hmm. The reality is, if any of you guys have vibe coded, and I have conspiracy theories around this, because I think a lot of these platforms just eat your credits on purpose. Just burn your money. I have now vibe coded probably 20 websites, and it still takes, if you want to do it right, most likely 30 to 50 hours. Mm-hmm. Because if you go through every word, every page, mobile view, tablet view, desktop view, the list goes on and on and on. You really do have to invest a lot of time. So yes, initial prompt is promising, and it's like, wow, this could be great. I could just do it myself. Actually going through completion, and then if you're trying to host it on some type of AI platform, that's really scary, because what if that platform has downtime? So to do it the right way, and that's what's so cool about what Kyle's talking about, is we structured it in a way where we can do it with AI, but we can do it the right way, which is really cool, saves a ton of time, and it's much more economical.
Sounds like a good marriage.
Yeah.
You know, there's enough commonality that allows you to have a core that keeps you together, and yet you each bring different perspectives that make your overall perspective as a unit greater. Like two combined to one is almost like, you know, it sounds like a good situation for clients.
Yes.
Yep. Just don't get a divorce during your midlife crisis there, Kyle.
I was going to say, yeah.
So you bring up a good point, Luke, about this DIY stuff. So Kyle and I have spoken about this a little bit. Every few months, it seems like there's someone online talking about how these marketing companies, especially digital marketing, it's just a black box, and we don't know what they're doing, and they're probably ripping us off. And, you know, they take and package something that you get for much cheaper, slap orthodontics on it, and now just like a wedding photographer upping their prices, you just pay this premium just because it says orthodontics on it. So when you hear those sorts of those reservations or those criticisms, how would you respond to that? And do you feel like people are getting it wrong? Is there any truth to some of these things that they're saying?
I think there is some truth. I mean, marketing is very taboo. So unfortunately, there are a lot of stories like what you're talking about associated with marketing. Same thing with sales. There's a lot of different things we could talk about that are like what you're talking about. What I would say is it all comes down to results and outcomes. You know, we have never batted 1,000 at HIP or Neon Canvas, unfortunately. And so it's understandable why certain clients may leave. Now, on the flip side of that, fortunately, we've done really well and gotten people a lot of results and the outcomes they were chasing. That's all it comes down to, in my mind, setting the right expectation. Hey, if we're going to work with you and spend this, be very specific, orthodontist, whoever's listening to this, on what you're expecting. Because I think that's where most things go wrong. Is, well, I thought you meant this. You just said you wanted to grow fast.
Yeah.
What does grow fast mean to you specifically? If we get very definitive, we can set it up the right way, and then we can hold each other accountable. Sadly, that doesn't happen a lot in the marketing space. It's like, hey, yeah, you need SEO, ads, you want a website, and the salesperson just sells these services. What was never set up the right way.
What is the right way? Where do some of these places fall short?
I think it's just like you guys with patients, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't go through getting records, talking to the patient, understanding what they want, their goals, how can you deliver that with the outcome? And so it's the same thing for us. If we're not taking the time to understand, like Kyle talked about, practice personality, who do you really want to be? Why? We need to pressure test that a little bit. Do you really want to be that? If I brought you 30 patients today, could you really fit them in the schedule? Because with digital leads, if you can't get people in quick, they're going to no-show. They're going to go somewhere else. So we need to do the proper discovery. And this is something that I've spent years on trying to really train our teams on. If we're not definitive, let's take a step back. Let's slow down the sales process and not just sling services. We have to understand exactly what the practice wants. And I will say a lot of practice owners don't know.
Yeah, so, that's what I was going to say, is that discovery is just as valuable for the orthodontist or the dentist, because they may not know the right questions to ask. I just got back from a meeting in San Diego where my core values, turns out they suck. Everyone that I said, they were like, here's an example of what you don't want to do. I'm like, that's literally what my core values are. So I guess, anyway, they gave us this AI prompt where it would probe and it would ask me questions, and then it would even push back like, well, would you fire someone if they didn't do that? I'm like, well, no, probably not. It's like, well, then that's not really a core value. That's more of a operating principle, and then it was amazing what AI was capable of doing to ask me those questions and then finally come up with something somewhat coherent that people could actually follow instead of just a vibe that like, oh yeah, we're all going to have integrity, right? What does that look like? So I think that there's probably a lot of orthodontists out there who don't know what their identity is or what it should be. And just doing a generic Google, ad is not going to get you there. I mean, I think that's maybe part of the issue that you and I have discussed, Kyle, with some of those posts that we've seen where a guy will say, I'm going to do this in-house. Everyone, let's get this together and let's crowdsource this. And then, we can do the same thing that these guys are doing. In light of branding, why wouldn't that work?
I mean, I think it can work. And in fairness, I guess I've been at this marketing thing for 10 plus years now. And before we started Neon Canvas, I spent a couple years trying to show people how to do the things that I was doing on my own. And I still believe that there are people among us who can do that and who can figure it out. And obviously Claude and GPT make that more easily achievable now than ever before. But there's still some pretty big barriers that stand between not having those things and then having those things. And probably more than that, it's the required consistency of doing those things over and over and over, and that discipline to keep it up to date. That is probably where most orthodontists will end up failing with it and then coming back. And so the story of people trying to do it on their own, whatever that looks like clients that we've lost over the years, a lot of those end up coming back and they say, yeah, well, we tried it and we brought someone in to do it and then it didn't work out like we had hoped, or it was a disaster. And of course, there's some that are successful at it. So I'm the last person to ever tell someone to not do it on their own. I love doing stuff on my own. I hate group projects. To be fair, I hate trusting someone else to do work for me. But there are times where it makes more sense to trust an expert to do it, certainly at scale. And certainly as an orthodontist, we talk about saying no to things such that life can thrive. This is one of those things where I think it makes a whole lot of sense to try to find the best expert who specializes in this area and allow them to do it for you. But that doesn't work for everybody. So, and I think at a certain size of practice, it might make a ton of sense to do it yourself. But it is one of those circumstances where the doing of it yourself should not be the only outcome that matters. It should actually just be boiled down to the logical and rational. What is going to create the most business growth for me? And what's going to be the most profitable choice for me? Because yes, you'll save money doing it yourself. You might lose a lot more money by not outsourcing it.
And I advised a guy, Kyle knows him, I talked to about 2 weeks ago. I got on a call with him. It was a great conversation. And he showed me his understanding and aptitude with AI. And I said, yeah, you should just try this yourself. If you run into an issue and need help, circle back and let's talk. But, think of people who have that itch. They're going to go crazy if they don't scratch it. And we have people on both sides who have left, tried something different, tried to do it on their own, tried to build an in-house team, and they've come back. We have somebody who's come back to hip 4 different times. And so can it be done? It absolutely could. We have people who are clients who are now competitors. They're going to run into the same issues we've ran into over time. I'm very upfront and forthcoming when we do make a mistake, when we do run into an issue, because that's life. You're not going to be perfect. Any business is going to go through these issues. For instance, if I said, hey, we're going to turn you into the $10 million practice tomorrow, you would go through the same breakpoints. Now, you may have different solutions. You may get through them faster, but you're going to run into the same types of issues with scale. So if somebody goes out and does it, wants to compete, great. If they actually want to do it at scale, they're going to go through the same things, the same journey in some capacity that we've gone through, because success leaves clues, right? So it's you see the same type of patterns.
No discussion is going to be complete until we talk about your thoughts on clinical orthodontics, Kyle. And I know you've got a few of them. One of the themes that I'm recognizing is this idea of honesty, and this tension between what we know to be or what we accept to be correct in the way that we practice versus what is marketable. And you have this perspective on both sides of things. You see the importance of marketing your practice, but you're also a clinician and you recognize that the primary focus is to do quality work, do no harm, and also avoid unnecessary treatment. So we're not going to be able to get into your entire clinical philosophy here, but why don't you just give us some of your top bullet points of the things that might be a little controversial in the profession? What's your perspective on this tension between clinical excellence and then marketing, and how does that apply?
Yeah, great question. And I always have to try to be a little bit careful because I do find, and you guys know this by running a group, it's easiest to be a moderate on topics. And generally speaking, I am a moderate. I'm politically a moderate. I'm most comfortable in that position. I am a seeker of truth to the degree that we can ever attain truth, It's never 100% objective when we're talking about clinical orthodontics, right? Which it always kind of comes back to, well, in my hands, in my experience, which is going to vary, of course. But things that I see, I think one of the big issues is clear aligners and braces. And of course, now with braces, you have custom braces and you've got self-ligating braces and you've got a lot of these different systems. And I guess at the end of the day, for me, I don't see a huge difference between different types of braces and the outcomes that people share. What I tend to see is the really talented orthodontists who really care could use just about anything and get a great result. The Tom Pitts, the Dwight Damons, the Stu Frosts, the et cetera of the world, the David Sarver, the whomever, they get good results with different types of braces. So just on some base level, I'm left to believe you can achieve great results with any of those. But the trickle down of that, and I think maybe those guys would agree, or maybe they would fundamentally disagree, I'm not sure. But what I find is that a lot of these marketing messages that these companies proposed, because it helped them sell more braces and it helped their salespeople achieve their goals and so on, people kind of have drank that Kool-Aid and really believe it in a very, very firm way. That does challenge me a little bit because I don't know. I feel like research-wise, academic-wise, we've decided that when you actually look at, let's just say self-ligating versus traditional twin or something, the differences in efficiency have not proved out in the science. And you can chalk that up to, it's a study design issue. And trust me, I've used both and we're way faster now. I just don't know. I think another one is clear aligners versus braces. One's choice to use more clear aligners than braces is what it is. But people that have made that choice, they tend to talk about clear aligners as if it's such a superior way to treat,
Right.
Same way that I'm now seeing with like a customized, bracket or appliance. Like this is the only way to treat, and you're a Luddite or a caveman if you do it differently. Right. And I just, I don't know. I guess another thing that I fundamentally believe is that the marketing around a product and in effect how you straighten teeth is not going to be as attractional as why you do what you do. I mean, it's the whole start with why concept or whatever. Mm-hmm. What we do is not going to differentiate us as orthodontists. Mm-hmm. What do you do? Well, I straighten teeth. Big whoop. So does everyone else. How do you do it? Well, I use self-ligation and I use this custom appliance and it can cut down treatment by 38%. Like those things to me are not really effective as marketing messages. Mm-hmm. And I struggle with it to the degree that I don't know that it's actually true further. Mm-hmm. What's actually attractional and differentiates your practice are going to be the why-based concepts, your unique story, the things you do in the community. Those are going to be the things that attract patients. So I'm really spinning around a lot of these things. I mean, the big one now is airway orthodontics. Mm-hmm. And that is a very complicated conversation. And I think, ultimately when there's a crossbite, when there's a very narrow upper jaw, I think 99% of orthodontists are going to use an expander. Yeah. And I think we know objectively that that's going to reduce nasal airway resistance. We've known that for 40 years from science. What does it actually do with the deeper things like sleep, obstructive sleep apnea, all those sorts of things? Does it help someone's attention deficit disorder, or does it help to align their, ankle? Does it help their lymphatic system? There's some like things that on the extremes people start to say, and from my view, it starts to make us sound like chiropractors a little bit.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Hey, don't knock my chiropractor.
Well, I guess we could do a little 5-minute segment on chiropractics.
We're already way over budget with our time. We're not getting into chiropractics.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm kidding.
You posted about this. I don't want to make this an airway discussion per se, but
that's fine.
You posted about this on the Digital Orthodontist, and then Cliff Capus pokes his head up every now and then, and I would just really love to read his response because
every 3 years.
I think it really encapsulates what I would consider a reasonable moderate to believe on the topic. And he says, and I'm quoting, "Honestly, I don't know why people overcomplicate this. If you are doing expansion to gain arch length or address a maxillary transverse deficiency, then you are treating as an orthodontist and safely within your," I don't know this word. Kyle, can you help me out? Métier? You don't know that either, huh? Métier, Brian, are you making this up or do you know what
French
that means?
word? It could be French. Métier, probably.
French. Métier.
Use Claude for that.
From the context, I'm guessing this means safely within your realm of expertise. I don't know why he doesn't just say that. But it's Cliff, and that's what he's got to do. Anyway,
he's smarter than us.
And refer to a highly
I got to show us that he's
profession.
smarter than us. Thus, any improvements in nasal respiratory capacity or amelioration of OSA or SDB are happy side effects of your orthodontic treatment. Everyone wins.
Happy side effects, yep.
If you are expanding for the sake of airway or diagnosing OSA based on a CBCT or questionnaire alone, then you are treating outside your scope of practice and leaving yourself vulnerable to quote unquote negligence per se malpractice claim via a statutory violation, which is much easier to prove than a standard negligence claim. Play safe, kids. I think that sums it up about as succinctly as possible. And I don't want to get too far down the airway path because that's a sticky wicket. But to focus on this tension between marketing and the motivations why someone might change their clinical perspective in order to market their practice. I mean, clearly that motivation is there. I mean, we're talking about selling products as well. That was another related concept here. This is the reason why we require disclosure of conflicts of interest on Pearls and why some of the other Facebook forums have required that as well, is that if you are incentivized or contractually obligated not to disparage a product or a company, then your opinion is inherently biased. You can't get around that. Now, you can make the argument that, well, I use this product and I love it so much and I want to share the word, this evangelical idea of what a KOL can be. But at the end of the day, there is another motivation there. If you were doing that out of the goodness of your heart, then why accept a paycheck for it? My time is valuable and all this. But now it's your job. And now your lifestyle is dependent on people adopting this product. And you're no longer just this happy mentor telling what's worked for you and guiding people. So those are my thoughts. We have some KOLs here. Why don't you guys tell me what you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be the first to admit that I can treat better with braces in almost every case, even though I speak for Angel. I have been excited to promote Angel because I feel it's far superior to Invisalign with Angel buttons and A6 and all that. But to your point, I don't make much as a KOL, to be honest. I do want to get it out there, and I'm happy to see the growth of it and a good product. And they haven't asked me to say otherwise. Maybe they will after this episode. I don't know. But
the question is, should you? Even if they ask you, should you?
No, absolutely not. No, I wouldn't stand behind a company that would require me to say something or speak for me. They might say, hey, we want you to speak on this product. They want me to talk about Angel Kid to treat phase 1. I don't do that. I don't do that much, so I'm not going to talk about it.
Well, hold on. How do we know that they didn't tell you to say this? A sort of feigned.
I guess you have to
It looks
trust
like
it.
he's reading off of a script right now.
No,
Well,
definitely.
Chris,
They're like,
let me push back a little bit on that. So,
Sure.
let's say, so you're not going to say anything that is outside of what you believe to be true, but might you omit
Correct.
information that could contradict what the company line is?
I don't know. I don't know if I would. If they asked me to say, like I said, to speak on phase 1 stuff, I don't do it, so I won't. I mean, I'm sure they want more people to do aligners than braces. I'm a braces practice, so I do still 80% braces. Aligners are pretty much for the ones where the parent comes in saying, I'm not doing metal on my teeth. I want clear aligners. And I say, this is the best option out there.
Let me phrase this another way. So let's just say that you've had a great experience with this one product, or let's just leave the companies out of it. Let's just say you speak
Sure.
Yep. for a company and you have a great experience with their product. And you can honestly get up there and say, I love this product and I use it for all of my patients and blah, blah, blah. But then you've also had an experience with another product, which is, in your opinion, equal or, almost just as good. Are you going to intentionally omit that information and imply then that this is a better product with no comparison? For example, let's talk about braces, right? Kyle, you're saying that most
Sure.
braces you can treat, a good clinician can treat to the same outcome regardless of the braces they use. So it's not lying to say that I use XYZ product and these are my outcomes and I get amazing finishes and I exclusively use them. But what you're not saying is that, well, for 10 years before I used this product, I was using another one and I got the same results. I could do the same thing with twin braces. And I'll tell you straightforward, behind the scenes, I have heard some KOLs use that as leverage with their companies where they'll say, I can do this with any product and you need to pay me more if you want me to continue to endorse yours. That happens. So that's
Sure.
what I mean by omitting other information to provide only a narrow tunnel vision that implies that your outcomes are directly related to the product when you actually know that you could do it just the same with something else.
Sure, that's a good thought. I think for me, that's not the case. I will be just honest about what I've gone through and what I've used, what I like about some and what I don't like about others. Mainly because, as a KOL, I get paid not much. I'd be much better off doing it, spending time in my practice. Kind of like when we do our meeting, we don't make nearly as much as if we had put time into our practice. So for me, it's more the enjoyment of speaking and sharing pearls and ideas. I don't know if that's the same for all. I hope so. I think that should be the aim of every KOL, but I think you get more credibility just being honest. And it's really the only way to be is that, like if I, let's say, had the opportunity to use Invisalign's palatal expander and it was awesome, I would share that. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a contractual obligation to not speak on the highlights of another product. So
I'll add this for what it's worth. I think this KOL conversation, it's now been happening for a decade. In fairness, my opinion and what I've seen is I think the vast majority of those who speak for companies are sharing what their honest experience has been. Yeah. Sometimes it'll lean a little bit more into companies have asked me, like, if I'm speaking to, like, will you say this exact thing? To which I always say, absolutely not. Like, I can't do that. I can't regurgitate, and it just would feel wrong, feel strange for me. I do generally believe that this issue gets trumped up more than it probably deserves, because no one that's a KOL, not no one, the vast majority of people who are KOLs are not making some significant amount of money. I think for a lot of people, as with a lot of things, as we started earlier, it's an ego thing, it's a pride thing, it's an opportunity to get up on a stage, to feel like a little bit special. And in most ways, it's not a bad thing. You know, it gives you something new and different to do or whatever. I don't think there's a whole lot of people like trying to lie or like intentionally misappropriate truth, and that they're going to find this huge success by doing this. You know, there's a very small handful that maybe own the patent of a bracket or of an expander or this or that or whatever. And maybe in those circumstances, they are actually, you know, monetarily like pressured to say things that maybe aren't true. But I think that's like vast minority. And so this issue gets, I think, made into a bigger deal than it probably deserves. At the same time, like, I do think that like truth and trying to be as honest as we possibly can with patients is really, really important. And it is oftentimes much easier when a patient says, hey, my dentist said that if you fix this bite, you know, I've got a deep bite, I've got a little bit of overbite, you know, I have this jaw joint issue, that should get better, right? And that stuff is hard for me because I really feel an obligation to explain what I think the truth on that matter is, which is to say, it makes sense. And I've gotten that feedback before, but also like when it's actually studied on a large scale, there isn't necessarily an association between bite correction orthodontics and jaw joint, you know? And it takes time to explain that. And honestly, it takes the wind out of the sails of that consult sometimes. But I'm guilty of like, I feel the need to teach and educate and try to be honest.
Absolutely.
Me too.
I think it's good because it sets expectations, proper expectations. You know, speaking about TMJD or airway or aligners versus braces, I always try and shoot straight from the beginning. And just say, for example, like, you know what, I'm not an airway physician. I'm not diagnosing anything. My problem is to diagnose orthodontic issues and to find ways to treat orthodontic issues. Now, if we do expand, which is what I would suggest here because of this reason, that reason, and the other reason, there may be some airway benefit. The research shows there's less resistance to nasal breathing. Does that mean you'll breathe better through your nose? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you're just so patterned to breathing through your mouth, or your kid's so patterned to breathe. Maybe it won't change anything. But here's a positive benefit. But I'm not treating the airway. I'm treating the orthodontic issues. So you stay in your lane by owning that. Another thing with braces and aligners, I'll often say, you know, in your case, I would definitely recommend braces for the outcome. And most people come here for an outcome. They don't come here for an experience. Nobody wants aligners. Nobody wants braces for the experience. They come here for an outcome, and they hope that they can find the most convenient, most aesthetic, et cetera, way to do it. And you seem set on aligners. And I'm telling you right now, I don't think aligners will get you the same outcome. Now, if you're okay with a silver medal or a bronze medal, hey, you can make an informed decision. That's great. You can accept trade-offs, but that's my opinion. Gold medal, in your case, is going to be braces. Silver or bronze, hey, you're still on the podium. So I think if you just leveled, and same thing with the TMJD stuff, hey, it might be neutral, it might benefit, who knows, if it's not related to bite, it could actually get worse with treatment. So I'd be careful to go into treatment because of this. Now, here are the orthodontic things we will address. So if you're interested in going to treatment just for these orthodontic reasons, knowing that your TMJD might benefit, might be the exact same, who knows, maybe even takes a dive for the worse because of some other factor that's happens during treatment that's unrelated to treatment. You just got to know that. And then their expectations are set, and it's easier for them to make a decision, and you're not going to get in trouble like, oh, shoot. Well, you told me, doc, that this would.
Kyle, you put up a poll about this because I know this is a hot button issue for you, and I'm going to put you on the hot seat. Let's do a hot take. Let's do a Kyle Fagala hot take. Why do 13% of orthodontists on your poll say that they can treat outcomes better with aligners than braces?
Well, that's tricky. Yeah. So I did this poll, totally unscientific, but I asked, you know, on average, I finish cases better with braces or aligners. I assumed braces would be like 60% to 40% aligners, and it was 87% to 13%. And so I think, like, to whatever degree there's bias in that, or, you know, it's a public poll so people can see, and maybe they just chase the momentum of braces.
I voted with fake accounts personally.
You thank you. Yes. I don't think
I voted on that too.
Yeah, you got someone
Luke voted on that. I saw that.
Chris Benson also voted. Luke told me he voted that way because his wife had aligners and had struggled with the outcome. So, I guess it's somewhat of an informed, but no, Luke, you shouldn't have voted on that. So yes. So let's say it's 86%. But I mean, Chris Benson voted for aligners. So maybe that cancels each other out. That's also a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode where they're going to vote, but they say, let's just leave.
I remember that. Yeah.
And then his guy loses by one vote. But anyway, I think that my takeaway, I'll just say this without any commentary or making assumptions and trying to be moderate in this, is that actually braces allow for us to finish better. I think it's as simple as that. And I think that is just people on average being honest about that. I think it comes also down to in my hands, I think of those people that believe that they finish better in aligners. Perhaps they do. It's not been my experience. I think I actually have more control over the braces. Now, you could say of those with aligners, it's just because you're not good at braces, or you could make some assumptions of them. But the reality is that I do see cases online with aligners where, man, that's a great finish. And I have cases with aligners where they wear them really, really well, and it's amazing. And there are cases for sure that I'm I will only treat this with aligners. I think this is true of all of us. Again, as an average, if I treat 1,000 patients, I feel like I would have a better success rate with braces than with aligners generally. And to make it about finishing, I think is another caveat too, is that I find that I have a little bit more control over that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm answering the question or not. I don't know that it's fair to assume that 13%.
It was a brilliant hedge, a very political answer. Not what I was looking for, but I'll take it. All right, guys. So we're going to wrap this up. This has been a lively discussion as always, but I want to hear from both Kyle and Luke. I'm not going to give you a number. Just give me give me a few of your favorite pearls. They could be marketing. They could be clinical.
Sure.
Marketing from you, Luke, just to be clear. I don't want to hear your thoughts on braces versus aligners again. But
hey, I had Embrace. So
he's already cast his vote. Yeah, he had Embrace.
Yeah, don't give me started on that. Let me give you guys in the audience one, because I thought of this when Kyle was talking about marketing and start with why. And so many people say, hey, I treat this way. Can't this be marketed? And Brian, you summed it up perfectly. Talk about the outcomes. In sales, people say, sell the destination, not the journey. Mm-hmm. And so the easiest way to do this, and most orthodontists, even if they're doing this well, there's still room to do even better, which is use your patients, your testimonials, your reviews. Most people are not getting video testimonials. There's some that are. How are you using that in your marketing? Are you tagging patients? Or mom sharing? That's going to be your best word of mouth marketing through digital. And you can also use those assets in paid advertising. And so if you're not doing everything you want or everything you could be doing, I would argue that alone could probably grow your practice to where you want it to be. That's how big it could be. And so if you want tips on that, no strings attached, reach out to me. I can give you a playbook on that. But I would challenge people, use your patients, use those happy outcomes, those great cases. And if patients are good with that, let them tell their story, because everybody's tuned into what's in it for me. And, your why can be great, especially internally. Like Andy, you're talking about core values. Your team cares about that. Patients and most of us, we kind of just care about us and the outcome that we want. And so market to that.
I love that. Paul Homley talks about story selling. He's like, you cannot sell better than through a story. If people get engaged, they're going to listen. They want to know the outcome. People love stories. They don't need facts. Those are being thrown at them a mile a minute. So get those stories. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I'll start with a clinical one. There was a post the other day in this group called Orthodontic Pearls, and it was showing a sort of small black triangle between 8 and 9, and there were veneers on the teeth, and the veneers didn't maybe look awesome, and it looked like there was almost some abfraction or something. So it wasn't like a no-brainer. But I was surprised at how few people thought that IPR first off would help with the black triangle. Or that it was something they just absolutely would not touch. And to each their own. But to me, it was like I would do that without any hesitation. And I, to be fair, would have done it before the braces had come off or whatever. I think maybe the veneers had happened later or whatever. Or people said, it's a restorative issue. And I don't think that's necessarily true either. No. I think, to me, again, I guess my point is, my clinical pearl is, find yourself a good IPR system and start looking for opportunities to improve black triangles, because I don't think as a profession that we do IPR enough for that. I think we also don't do enameloplasty enough. The best cases that I see are those doctors are very, very like locked in on that aspect of basically tooth reshaping and optimization of contacts and edges.
Huge.
There's more that we could say about that, but I will see orthodontists, God bless them, that will share cases. They're nicely treated, but if you've got a massive black triangle between 8 and 9, to me, it's an absolute failure. Like it drives me insane. But that's
you recommend a mosquito burr for that procedure.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we had a long conversation about that. No, I represent a precision disc system, but hey, whatever. Brian and I, who obviously achieved the best clinical results between the four of us, we both use discs. So I think that says it all. So, and have you seen Brian? He molded a bust of Abraham Lincoln or something. Probably have the name wrong. C.S. Lewis or somebody. And he's an artist.
I did a few.
Okay.
No, but I agree with IPR and softening the line angles and the point angles. One of my biggest pet peeves in working with other practitioners in different practices is when they do IPR, no softening the point angle, close the space, and now the embrazure's obliterated. There's no embrasure. And in fact, when I finish a case, I often will say, hey, now I want to show you in the mirror. I'm going to show you what my eye sees, and I'm going to suggest recontouring these. And I'm going to tell you why I think what I'm suggesting will be better. Of course, you're free to do it or not. But I generally try to use language to let them know, hey, less is more. I'm not going for artificial flawlessness. That's not real. It kind of looks weird. I'm going for natural beauty, gracefully flawed kind of a thing. But I'll point out like the flattening. Okay, so when you have attrition, you get these sharp point angles and it looks worn. The average person's not going to know why it looks worn. They're just going to look at that and say, kind of looks like they're a grinder. And it's because they don't have any embrasures and they have sharp point angles. So of course, smooth out. I say, okay, let's soften this bump. And I use these, word euphemisms. I'm going to soften this, that. I'm going to, smooth that, blah, blah, blah. But one key thing in making a case look great is softening the point angles after IPR every time so that when the space closes, there's an embrasure. And when you finish a case, use like a mosquito burr, something really thin, or that little Hershey Kiss diamond burr to recreate the embrasure. Because if they've had attrition, their teeth look straight, but their smile doesn't look great because it looks like they've flattened their teeth out because they have. So the only way to erase that, the only way to sort of erase that look in our realm, is either to do restorative work or to just recreate the embrasure. And I've done it on patients before where I've just explained briefly, take a minute. Here's what I'm going to do. You do it, and they say, "Oh my God, that looks so much better. Oh my gosh, thanks for even mentioning that." Because you just create this small embrasure, and it looks so much better than just the chiclet look where it's just boom, boom, tooth next to each other. So I'm a big fan of that, Kyle. I advocate that for too. You got to soften those point angles and line angles, or else you're kind of, on the one hand, you're doing them a service by eliminating a black triangle, but on the other hand, you're doing a disservice by freaking eliminating the embrasure. You got to do both.
Exactly. Yep.
As for a quick marketing pearl, for what it's worth, I find that a lot of people's default for spending on Google ads, on Meta ads, is too low. Just to understand how that works, if you have a $10 a day budget for your practice on Google and you have all these different keywords that someone could search, and as they click or as they see it's eating into your budget, the reality is that you may be completely hidden in the ads section by 9 or 10 in the morning. And so think of your budget more as what keeps me there all day long on a multitude of keywords, and less about, okay, well, how should I budget for this? Because the power of being there and being seen and being clicked on, I would argue, outweighs whatever it is that you're spending. I mean, there are break points on all of this, but I find that some people are like, I just want to spend, $500 a month. And that amount does not keep you like on, Google showing up in the vast number of cases. So just a small little pushback there to revisit what your budget is, to try strategically, like let's try a month where we double that and just see what that looks like. We don't get paid if your advertising budget goes up. So I think I can say this without bias, but I just find that can unlock a lot of levels of success for practices.
Awesome. Love it. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate your pearls. This has been a lively discussion as always. Tell our audience how they can get in touch with you if they're interested in finding out more about your services at ION.
Sure. They can just go to iongrowth.ai and learn more there and contact both of us, either Hip Creative, Neon Canvas, through that website.
And then we'll put a link to that website in our show notes here as well. All right, guys. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in with us again today. If you like what you're hearing, please go ahead and subscribe to our podcast. Give us a like, give us a 5-star review, nothing less, please. And if you are one of those sponsors out in the orthodontic space who is interested in getting your message out in front of over 9,000 orthodontists from across the world, inquire with us about some sponsorship opportunities for the meeting, for the Facebook group, and then, of course, the podcast as well. You can do that by reaching out to us at orthodonticpearls@gmail.com. Again, thanks everyone for being here with us, and this was fun. Let's do it again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, guys.
Right on. Thanks, you guys.
Bye.